Good morning and welcome to the McGill Dementia Education Program's Caring Conversations, a free community outreach initiative to provide virtual support to care partners of people living with dementia. The McGill Dementia Education Program offers a comprehensive range of free resources to educate and support persons living with dementia, family and informal caregivers, healthcare professionals, medical students, and the public at large. An important resource is Dementia, Your Companion Guide, which is available online for free in 12 different languages. Printed copies can also be obtained at Amazon. You can also find answers to many of your questions in the extensive library of McGill Cares webcasts and podcasts. Caring Conversations is an initiative of the McGill Dementia Education Program and is supported by the Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation. Now, let's meet our moderators. Lucy Barilak received her Master of Social Work from the McGill University School of Social Work. She has developed evidence-based training for seniors and caregivers, and she has lectured in the field of social gerontology and presented in major conferences. Her research studies have been published in numerous journals. Ms. Barilak received the Queen's Jubilee Award for her role in developing a national coalition to support caregivers across Canada. Joanne Besner is an educator, professional coach, and caregiver. She received her Bachelor of Social Work, Master of Business Administration from McGill University. Her 35-year career in public community health and care in Quebec spans many roles, including frontline case manager, clinical supervisor, manager, researcher, and trainer. Now, today's topic for our caring conversation is using positive intelligence in caregiving. Lucy and Joanne will discuss how this approach can help set boundaries and limits and help you cope better with the challenges of caregiving. Joanne and Lucy. Oh, one more thing. We ask that you keep your microphones turned off. We will unmute people as needed once we open the discussion. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website. We will stop recording at 11 a.m., 30 minutes before the end of the session, so that those who might want to share but do not want to be recorded may have a chance to do so. Lucy and Joanne, over to you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Welcome, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to our 16th episode of Caring Conversations. Caregiving or being a care partner can look like many different things, just as we are many different faces here today. You know, some of you live with spouses, partners, some family caregivers live close by or out of town. Some are siblings pitching in, children, young adult caregivers. Some of you are caregivers occasionally and part-time caregivers. You know, even though these roles differ in intensity, one thing you all share is facing dementia. It requires taking on new knowledge, skills, and challenges. Over the last 15 caregiving conversation episodes, we have discussed both the positive aspects and some of the most difficult aspects of caregiving. For example, sundowning, wandering, repeating, paranoia, aggression, inappropriate sexual behaviors, and anticipatory griefs, just to name a few. We all have different levels of physical and emotional tolerance and resilience. We all have, differing lengths of time that we will be able to continue caregiving. Today's talk is about boundaries, limit setting, and saying no. Setting and abiding by healthy boundaries can help caregivers better focus on the positive aspects of caregiving. Interestingly, one of the comments we received from last month's presentation was to please give a constant reminder to this audience to look after ourselves. So I'm going to honor that comment by saying it right now at the start today. As a partner, as a caregiver, partner in care, you must take care of yourself. One of the ways you can do this is by setting personal boundaries unique to you alone. All right, so one of the things is saying no honors your wishes and your desires. This allows you to focus more on the positive aspect of caregiving. What it also does is strengthens the bond with your person. There's a sense of personal accomplishment and gratification. Being grateful for the good things in your life, a good perspective, and making memorable moments together. So let's go over the agenda today. So what we said is that we're talking about boundaries. So what do we mean by boundaries and setting limits? Why is it so difficult to say no? We're going to look at the positive intelligent model to help caregivers say no and set those limits. So let's look at what are boundaries. Boundaries are guidelines. They're rules or limits that a person creates to identify for themselves what is reasonable, safe, and permissible. Now, personal boundaries are like a no trespassing sign. Define where you end and others begin. So why set boundaries in caregiving? Let's look at that. Boundary setting is essential to help us maintain our self-worth and assure our relationships are caring and respectful. Personal boundaries in caregiving help you decide what types of communication, tasks, behavior, and interaction are acceptable for you and how you wish to be treated. So what's in it for you? We know that there will be less anger and resentment or being sad all the time. And one of the other things is you'll have the time and energy to do things for you that you've been missing out. A lot of caregivers tell us that they kind of gave up a lot of the things that were important to them. It could be more able to focus on the positive aspect of caregiving when you feel that you have the time for yourself. And above all, the whole notion of just self-respect. So, lack of boundaries. I want to tell you what the research says. Research shows that if the more difficulty you have saying no, the more likely you are to experience stress, burnout, and even depression. And that's really important to keep in mind. A lack of boundaries is like leaving the door to your home unlocked. Anyone, including those unwelcome, can enter at will. Saying no is a major challenge for many of us.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for that introduction, Lucy. And you can see a big no on the screen. So why is saying no so difficult? And in caregiving, no, it's not just black and white. No can mean not yet, not now, or not like this. So you're here today at this webinar. Are you having difficulty saying no in your caregiving? And I really want you to stop and pause and think about this. Are you personally having difficulty setting your limits? Because I know saying no has been a tough one for me. So why is it so difficult for us? It's mostly because of our fears. What are we afraid of? We are afraid of being rejected, of not being liked. We may be afraid of being abandoned. If we say no, we'll be alone, we'll be isolated. Fear of causing a confrontation. If we say no, what are we going to open up? Is there going to be a fight? And of course, the last is fear of change. Change is scary. And even though something may be not exactly the way we want it, we may fear just making a change at all. Whenever you say yes, you are saying no to something else. When you say yes, what are you saying no to? When you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're really saying no to you. No to something you'd prefer to do or something more important to you in the long run. But of course, as caregivers, we can't always choose what we wish over our responsibilities. So that's a bit of a conundrum. What do we do with that then? How do you know if and when you need to set boundaries? So I'm going to give you 3 questions to ask yourself right now. And again, feel free to put, to share in the chat. Are you feeling anger or resentment or find yourself continually whining or complaining? Then you probably need to set a boundary. Are you feeling continually depleted? Then you probably need to set a boundary. And if you feel chronically taken advantage of in certain situations, emotionally, financially, or physically, you probably need to set a boundary. So you can't hope to say no or not now when the pressure's on you until you know for sure what is it that you really want. And as caregivers, if we're going to be honest, that's harder said than done. Look at our journey. Often we fall into the role, right? Because it's necessary, required, and we're there. There's no time to think about it, especially at the beginning when we're digesting a diagnosis and adjusting to life with dementia. But then at some point, you may reach your level of tolerance, and that's when you may need to consider setting your limits. Consider your values, emotions, abilities, wishes, and choices. If you notice feelings of discomfort or resentment, don't bury them. We're always giving you the message not to sweep things under the rug. Try to understand what your feelings are telling you. What are your wishes? And very important, what are your choices? What are the choices you know? And what are maybe some other choices that you're not aware of? So I would ask you to take inventory of yourself. Ask yourself, and right now in this minute, while you're attending this webinar, how are you doing? Where are you at? Think about what's acceptable to you and what's not. Explore how you feel when you fall in that trap of giving just a little bit more over and over until you've given far too much. Some days you're going to give more than you take, and other days you're going to take more than you give. But if you're always the one giving, there may be a problem. Take the time to think it through. Think through what you want to accomplish by setting boundaries. What's it going to do for you? Consider also that having too rigid boundaries can lead to isolation. So this is very important if you're going to make a change. You don't want to go too far one way or too far the other way. And then with whom do you need to set your limits with? Is it with the person you're caring for? Is it with yourself? Is it with your family caregivers, your fellow care partners? Is it with the professionals who may be putting too much pressure on you? So imagine that after reflecting on all of this, you come to the point where you're ready now to take the first few steps. That means breaking old patterns and developing new habits. Change is a process and it is rarely done overnight. So we really recommend that you do this one small change at a time. So how to set limits. So at this point in our discussion, Lucy and I would introduce you to our little recipe or the steps that we want to you to use to guide you on how to set limits. But we're going to hold off on doing that right now. Why? Because it's so important to be in the right frame of mind to be able to break patterns and develop new habits. So this is why we are going to turn to positive intelligence to help us put these suggestions into action and get our mindset in the right space. So for those of you who may not have been in some previous webinars, because I've presented positive intelligence a couple of times related to different topics, I just want to share this is the book written by Shirzad Chamine. And full transparency, positive intelligence is my operating system. I use it in my work, but I also use it in my personal life. That's how strongly I believe in these principles. So I'm really looking forward to sharing it here today. So positive intelligence is a way to cope with life's challenges with a positive versus a negative mindset. but we're never sweeping our emotions under the rug. However, staying in negative emotion hurts our ability to see clearly and respond appropriately. By shifting towards positive emotions, we can make decisions in a calm, collected, and creative state of mind. And this is where we need to be in order to set limits and create a boundary. So this is what positive intelligence is all about. So we said we're talking about our headspace, so we're going to start with our mind. And we know our mind can be our best friend, our mind can be our worst enemy. And you can see on the left, we see the devil, and on the right, we see the angel, and this should be a familiar picture to you. So we ask ourselves, is caregiving rewarding? Yes, caregiving can be rewarding. Lucy described the ways it can be rewarding when we started the webinar. Is caregiving painful? Yes, sometimes caregiving can be very painful. And we absolutely have to acknowledge that pain, listen to it. But staying in that pain is not helpful for you or the person you're caring for. What makes us stay there are saboteurs. We all have saboteurs, and they are those negative voices in our head that generate negative emotions in the way we handle life's everyday challenges. Those saboteurs that we all have can interfere with our ability to manage our emotions, our caregiving role. They can interfere with how we relate to our family members. They can cause our feelings of anger, resentment, and envy, which inevitably cause us pain. Is pain helpful to you? Think about it. Your hands on that stove. Is pain helpful to you? Yes. As an alert, there's a message you're getting. And what do we need to do? Get our hand off the hot stove. But camping out in negative emotion, keeping your hand there, hurts your ability, as we said, to see clearly and respond appropriately for ourselves and for others. We want you to get your hand off that hot stove. So let's look a little bit about the neuroscience behind this. And I'm taking you back to that slide again. And we're going to look at inside our mind, but really into our brain. And what do we see? Saboteurs or negative thoughts live mostly, and I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm generalizing a bit here, but they live mostly in regions of our left brain. The negative emotions like anger, shame, and guilt. But positive emotions like empathy, curiosity, and calm live mostly in the right side of the brain. And what's so interesting, this is proven in MRIs, where people who are feeling negative emotion, the regions of their left brain show more active, and the opposite. If you're feeling positive emotions, the regions in your right brain show more activity. So we all have saboteurs. And what I want to do now is introduce you to some of these nasty characters. So I'm going to introduce you to the first 9 saboteurs in our model of positive intelligence. And I want us to have a little bit of fun with this. First, saboteurs, they completely mess with our minds. They swoop in, they trigger us, especially in caregiving. We all have them. Lucy has them. I have them. They are here in this audience today, whether we want them or not. But I want to emphasize that saboteurs are not defects in us. As a matter of fact, they actually come from our greatest strengths. But when we overdo them, they become obstacles. So as I go through each one of them, I want you to see if you might be harboring any of these saboteur thoughts in your head. If you have a pen and paper, you can write them down. But if not, just see if you recognize a saboteur influencing you. So we're going to start at the top left where we have the controller. So if you have that voice, it tells us we need to take charge and control everything. Only we can do it right. Nobody else can care for our person as well as we can. This makes it very hard to allow others to caregive and delegate some of our tasks. Next is the hyperachiever. That hyperachiever saboteur voice tells you you're only as good as your last achievement or performance for self-respect and self-validation. You must constantly achieve excellence, even in your caregiving role. And I have to admit, I have definitely suffered from that saboteur voice, that saboteur hyperachiever voice. Restless. Restless makes you constantly in search of greater excitement or constant busyness, rarely at peace with the current activity. So let's move to the next line, and we have the stickler saboteur. And the stickler saboteur is kind of what it sounds like. It's perfectionist. So if you have that voice telling you you need to do it perfectly, perfectionism and a need for order and organization can be taken too far. And that's really tough on others around you because it makes people feel that they're just not good enough. So then I really want to focus here in the middle on the pleaser saboteur. Many caregivers and helpers in the helping professions have a pleaser saboteur. I have a very strong pleaser saboteur. And again, remember, these come from your greatest strength. But I'm wondering here, does anybody in our audience have the pleaser saboteur? And this means, just wanting to gain acceptance and affection by helping, pleasing, rescuing, making other people feel good about themselves. Many carers are pleasers. It can cause you, though, to lose sight of your own needs, and then you can become resentful. And this one can lead to burnout. That's why it's so important to recognize the pleaser saboteur. Then there's the hyper vigilant. This voice causes continuous anxiety about all the dangers and what could go wrong, hovering, anxious, thinking of the next thing that will happen in this disease. Avoider is the extreme opposite. An avoider makes you focus only on the positive and unpleasant. Don't tell me about difficult and unpleasant tasks and conflicts. I don't want to know from them. So obviously these could lead to denial in dementia. And the victim, being the victim causes us to be highly emotional and temperamental, to gain attention and affection. And this leads to an extreme focus on our painful feelings and difficulties of caregivers. And of course, we are entitled to voice our pain and our difficulties. But if we do it to the extreme, it turns people off. And again, we can find ourselves very isolated. And finally, we have the hyper-rational. Someone with that saboteur has an intense and exclusive focus on the rational. What does the data say? What do the facts say? And they just avoid all emotions. But then there is the nastiest saboteur of all, the 10th saboteur, which we all have, which is called the judge. If we are breathing, we are judging, even if we think we're not judgmental. So on the left, you see a picture of a wicked witch. And that's because I will share with you that I have a very strong judge. My judge sits on my shoulder and, excuse me, even after a very successful career, and I'm on my second career, my judge can sit on my shoulder just like this and tell me, Joanne, you're not good enough. Joanne, you could have done better. Joanne, you didn't do that right. So ask yourself, do you have a judge voice in you? Mine is so strong. I named her the Wicked Witch, and I made a little facsimile of her, which you see here. And when she shows up, I take her out, I put her in front of me, and I let her know who's boss. And I tell her, I'm just fine the way I am, and so are you. So why is it important to be aware of our saboteurs, these voices in our head? Well, the reason is because if we're spending most of our time in our saboteur brain, we may be unhappy and convinced that there's just no other way to caregive. We may be stuck in our patterns and not be able to say no, set limits, or do things a little differently. So positive intelligence helps us look at the neuroscience behind us, which is really interesting. And the good news is we can, even if we've had years and years of habits, we can retrain our brain and we can create different pathways, even if we feel stuck. So here's an example of these are all the neural pathways in our brain. So imagine here an event happens, something happens, and you get triggered, something in caregiving. Maybe somebody asks you to do one more thing in your role and it's just going to tip you over. And here we see you have a choice how to react, but this blue line is so strong because maybe it's been months and months, or maybe even years of caregiving, and you're kind of stuck in this pattern, and this groove forms, and your brain just automatically goes to those negative feelings, and you really are stuck in that pain of caregiving. It's very hard to see the positives. So even if you have these neural pathways, you do have a choice, and that's what I'm going to show you right now in positive intelligence. If you can find a way to shift over to your calm, more positive thoughts, you can change your patterns. And this applies to setting limits. So how you do it again, you have an opportunity here to pause and choose. We want you to choose to move over to your, what we call wise brain or sage brain. If you do it often enough, you're going to create a new habit. How do we do it? So now comes the fun. Just as you go to the gym and lift weights to build up your physical muscles, we all learn that, right? You have gyms starting from a little kid in school. We're all doing physical fitness. We know we have to be fit to be healthy, but we also need to build up our mental muscles. And this is called mental fitness. So just like we lift weights in a gym to get physically fit, we can grow our core mental muscles to get mentally fit. And we do this with a few simple exercises. And this way we can get out of the way of our saboteurs, leave them at the door so we can operate in calm, clear-headed wisdom. How do we do this? We do repetitions. And in the positive intelligence model, they're called PQ reps. Only instead of lifting weights, we're doing some brain exercises. And what these are 2 minutes of focused attention on a physical sensation. So I am actually going to take you through a few of these now and teach you how to do a PQ rep so you can strengthen your core mental muscles. So I'm going to repeat again. How do we do PQ reps? What is it? We're going to take 2 minutes and exquisitely focus on a physical sensation. And the brain is a funny character. It can only do one thing at a time. So I promise you, if you do this, it's going to take you out of your negative thoughts. I'm going to show you 5 ways to do this using 5 senses. Using the breath, number 1, touch, visual, using our eyes, auditory, listening, and finally using scent and taste. So let's get started. So I'm going to invite you to join me today, but it's up to you. You can simply listen if you like, but we're going to go through very briefly what these PQ reps, what these exercises can look like. So we're going to start with our breath. Join me. I want you to take a breath in and a breath out. Focus on your breath as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Put your hand on your stomach. Notice your stomach and your lungs rise with each breath. Take a few deep breaths and then return to your natural, relaxed rhythm. Continue to do this for a couple of minutes. If your mind wanders, that's okay. Label whatever you're paying attention to. Did your mind go to a doctor's appointment? Bring it back. Just gently return to your breath and stay there. Breathe in and breathe out. So that's the first one, using a PQ exercise, using breath, and these are the most popular ones. Number 2, use your sensation of touch. Rub two fingers together with such attention that you can feel the ridges on your fingers as you move them up, down. My favorite with touch is taking your two palms together. Close your eyes and rub them slowly up and down against each other. Feel your fingertips below your wrist, moving upwards. Feel the sensations. Focus exquisitely on the sense of touch. You can touch something in front of you, for example, a soft pillow. Feel the surface, the texture, the material, the temperature, and the sensation. And do this for 2 minutes. Everyone can find 2 minutes in your busy day. The third one I want to tell you about are visual PQ reps. So you do this with your eyes open. Look at something intensely in front of you. It could be my face. It could be the screen or the keyboard in front of you. Look at it with such attention that you see all the intricate details, colors, shadows, textures, shapes. See it as if you've never seen it before. And now we're going to move on to the fourth one, which are auditory PQ reps. Listen to and for this one, it helps. I like to close my eyes. Listen to the closest sound you can hear and listen to the further. One of my favorites is that I have a hammock on my balcony, and if weather permits, I go sit in my hammock, close my eyes, and listen to the sound, the closest sounds that you can hear. And for me, that might be the birds chirping, it might be a dog barking, it might be the squirrels, and then listen to the furthest sound you can hear. It might be a horn honking, could be construction or tires rolling. And of course, you can always listen to your favorite music and focus on one instrument only. Do this for 2 minutes. So this is an example of auditory PQ reps. And finally, you can even do it with food. So scent and taste, you take a food like a raisin or a grape, smell it, put it to your lips, feel the texture, taste it on your tongue, roll it around gently in your mouth. Close your eyes as you focus on the taste and the texture and the smell and the temperature, and relish the taste of the food. Again, exquisite focus on a physical sensation does not allow you to be in negative emotions. It automatically shifts your brain to the positive, our wise brain. So now that I've showed you the exercises, when to do them, ideally 3 to 4 times a day. Take a couple of minutes out of your busy day. Do them as soon as you wake up so that you can put something in your tank. Do them around lunch. Do them midway through the day and then maybe before supper. Take a 2-minute break every few hours. And especially if you are triggered with something in your caregiving day. Again, somebody asked too much of you, or you're faced with a very difficult behavior from the person you're taking care of. Do some PQ reps. Do them when you're sabotaged. And you don't even have to do them for a full 2 minutes. Just take 10 seconds. If you do them for a full 10 seconds, it's enough to bring you out of your sabotage brain. So this, again, going back to our head, is where an event happens. We have the opportunity to change. We have an opportunity to pause and not to just go down into our saboteur brain. Pause. Choose to do some PQ reps and get yourself back in your wise brain. So now hopefully we're all in that good frame of mind, and we're going to share with you now, how do we apply positive intelligence to be able to follow the steps to actually set limits. So the steps we want you to take are, firstly, pause, say no, be clear, Share your intentions with those who are caregiving with you. Explore new options and repeat. This is our formula. Let's look at them, each one individually. First, pause. Okay, you're ready to set limits. So something's happened. You've reached your caregiving threshold, or someone else is asking or needs you. Stop. Do some PQ reps like I described and shift to your wise brain. No one has the right to demand an immediate response from you unless you're in a crisis situation. Say no, or not now, or not like this, and ask for some time. Take the time you need to think, figure out what the change might look like, and do not justify or apologize for coming to this realization. If you're taken off guard, you might practice a sentence, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you tomorrow. Ask for a day to think before providing an answer. It's going to be easier to say no once you've had time to consider the request. And it's also going to give you a chance to ponder the best way to say no. So important, be clear. If you're going to set a limit or a boundary, make sure you're saying no. Avoid being wishy-washy. Avoid phrases like, I don't think I can, I'm not sure, I'm not certain. Using limp phrases instead of saying no is going to be considered a yes. When it's time to say no, just say no. And of course, share your intention. Prepare your family and share it. Making a conscious decision to set certain boundaries isn't enough. You need to let those involved and impacted know. We can't hope or expect others to guess what we need, even if we wish they did. And be respectful of others. It should not be about winning or taking as much as possible. Instead, consider what's fair and possible for everyone. And here I'm going to send it back to you, Lucy, to continue with our tips.
Well, I want to thank you for that, Joanne, because you kind of put me in the moment as well. As you said, we all have saboteurs, and it's important to admit that to ourselves. So let's look at others will react. We know that. If you're making a change, others need to, to readjust. Let's put it that way. It's normal if it upsets them. They're used to you saying yes. I mean, you've always said yes, and what is this all about? They're kind of confused. Some people might test you. Expect it, but remain firm. Your behavior must match the boundaries you are setting. So when you establish healthier boundaries, naturally, the people who are used to what you did before may get irritated or upset. Be prepared. In fact, some may even continue to disrespect your boundaries and just expect you to do that. As you move forward, you'll find those who care about you will be supportive of your healthy new boundaries. You'll know who's there for you by the fact that they actually respect what you're saying at that time. So be prepared to repeat yourself, all right? That's a big one. Just because you say it once does not mean that it's going to happen naturally. If you say no and other party pushes back, the best thing you can do is repeat yourself over and over again, quietly, calmly, and respectfully. Be prepared. Your saboteurs will rage. As Joanne said, they're going to pop up because they're just used to doing that to you. You will be vulnerable to backtrack, and you might want to say yes. Be careful not to back yourself into a corner by trying to explain yourself further. You made a statement. You want people to respect that. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. You do not have to justify your choices. You need only to be respectful to them, and most important, to respect yourself. Okay, so let's look at this. Say yes to the person, but no to the task. So here are a few little tips that you could use. I think they're interesting and they're helpful. You can say, thank you for having confidence in me. I appreciate it. However, I can't at this time. I would like to support you on this, but I have committed to something else. I understand this is important to you and wish I could support you. However, I'm not able at this time. It must be so tough for you. I really get it, but I cannot. So what you're actually doing here is you're acknowledging the person, the difficulty they may have. You're being very respectful and you're not being judgmental, but you're standing your ground. You're saying that at this time, I cannot do it. And it's perfectly all right. This is part of the practice of getting to that point. Now, sometimes it could be a halfway kind of a situation, and a lot of it can be with family members in particular. Or maybe you're having a family conference because things are really getting difficult. And you could say something like, I've looked at what's on my plate, and I think I can manage to do part of this. Can we see if anyone else can help? Well, I can't take this on in full. Here's what I can offer. Would that be of value? Let's put our heads together and see what we can come up with together. And many times, in family, if you're having a family conference, this way you are actually being very honest about what you can and what you cannot do. You're also acknowledging maybe others can step up to the plate. Okay, setting boundary takes practice and a lot of effort. And that's why it's so important when Joanne said to do your little exercises a few times a day for 2 minutes. It's that practice in itself sort of sets you up to be able to deal with it. So, but I do want to say that at first you will probably feel selfish. A lot of caregivers do. I know myself, if I have to say no, I kind of, a little bit uncomfortable at first, but then I get back to myself. You might feel guilty or embarrassed when you set a boundary. Do it anyway and remind yourself you have a right to self-care. Okay. Remember in the beginning when I said, when one of the comments was that caregivers need to take care of themselves. Many times we talk about there are two people in this relationship. One does not outweigh the other. There's a balancing act. And you owe it to yourself to take care of yourself. So quality of life is not handed to you or anyone else for that matter. You must create it. It has everything to do with how you see yourself while you deal with this diagnosis and the decisions you make about how you want to travel in your caregiving journey. You have a choice. So let's say something happens, all of a sudden things are going a little bit hectic. So that whole thing of repeating, if you're feeling negative emotions, very much what Joanne said, we're just looking at it again, you need to stop. You need to recognize that you are in a saboteur mode. Do some PQ reps to quiet the saboteurs and activate your sage. Go back to the right side of your brain. Don't take a left turn. Convert this issue into an opportunity to set your limits because you're kind of taking control at that time. I have a choice here. Set your boundaries using empathy, curiosity, and calm. And we talked about that. There's no need to yell and scream or be disrespectful. By being, you show your empathy, you show your curiosity, and you stay calm. Okay, so the other thing that kind of ask yourself, is there a chance you can't seem to make it? If the answer is yes, and you feel stuck or trapped, you do not have to do this alone. Reach out and talk to a professional before you burn out. What I want to say is throughout our sessions, we talked about emotions a lot. And we've always said, acknowledge your emotions. It's so important. If you're constantly angry or sad or you're agitated, say it. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm agitated. Try to understand where it's coming from. This is by understanding and acknowledging your feelings is really the first step to getting help. And as I said, you don't need to do this alone. Okay, before we go into having a caring conversation, I do want to say that Joanne and I shared a lot of information this morning, a lot of information. And we want to make sure that you all understand the concept of positive intelligence. So please feel free to ask any questions or you have any comments or any ideas, as well as, ask yourselves, is this something that I feel would help me in my caregiving journey? So now we have a really good opportunity to have a very caring conversation. So it's open to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne and Lucy. There's been one comment, and I guess maybe some people have been thinking it possibly as well. And it's this is great information. However, the person that we are caring for, a person with dementia, will not understand why we are saying no. They do not understand boundaries. Many of us do not have anyone else. I have no other family or friends. All of this information is assuming that we have someone else, but many of us have no one else.
Thank you for that. So actually, that's the reason we put the last slide up. The one with the sad puppy dog saying, if you feel like you're trapped and you have nowhere else to go. So there are, unfortunately, those of you who are alone, Lucy was an only child, the only caregiver, and had to do it alone and bore the burden of it. But there are other options. There are public resources and supports that you may know of or you may not know about. So we encourage you, if you do feel like you don't have any way out and you have no one to share with, that's when it is time to seek professional and to reach out to the system, because no one can do it all alone. And you can burn out if it's too much. Something I want to add about setting boundaries. First of all, you mentioned about setting boundaries with the person you're caring for. If someone has dementia, there are many stages of dementia. So there comes a point where they no longer have the insight, and you cannot explain to them that you're setting boundaries. But a few webinars ago, we talked about self-care and the need to leave a person and to allow respite in the door, even if that person is begging you to stay. Although it's very difficult, sometimes as a caregiver, we do have to leave our person for a few hours to save ourselves, to give us some time to regenerate our batteries by getting some professional respite in the door. These things are hard. No one is ever going to say that it's easy. But we did share that over time, your person with dementia hopefully becomes more comfortable and gets used to you leaving. Before I pass it to Lucy, though, for all of those of you who are who are alone in it and feeling alone in it, really my heart goes out to you. You're in a very, very challenging situation. So we welcome all comments from people, to help each other. What do you do when you really do feel trapped and you can't find your way out?
Yeah. Yes, it is extremely difficult. And as Joanne said, I was an only child and we didn't have family here. I was caring for my mother. I just want to go back to what you said about the fact that the person you're caring for does not seem to understand or accept no. It happened to me as well. And the way I looked at it at that time was by saying no, I was actually giving myself permission. Whether my mother understood or not at that point, I had to understand it. I'm the one that had to set the limits for my own well-being, my emotional and mental well-being. So I know it's hard. It's very, very hard, and you feel extremely guilty. But by not setting limits, I knew that I was going to get myself into a very difficult situation of handling things. So it's almost as if you're giving yourself permission. You're allowed to say no to yourself even, okay? I can't do this right now. Is it, gauge it. Is it an emergency? Does it need to be handled right this minute? And even if they don't understand, say no to yourself, do whatever it is that you need to do. You can always go back to it a little bit later.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you, Lucy. There's a comment. This sounds like mindfulness work. And then we have another. I don't know. Did you want to respond to that? I'm sorry.
Yes, very, very perceptive. So what's interesting about positive intelligence is it's not the creation of something new that we've never heard of. Positive intelligence is based a lot on neuroscience, which comes from the evidence from mindfulness, meditation, and all these kind of practices that first introduced us to this kind of work. So what I want you to take away from this is often for caregivers and self-care, we recommend yoga, we recommend meditating. Not everybody can get to a yoga class. Not everybody can take a half an hour out to meditate. But what I really like about positive intelligence is it's accessible, where it shows that just with 2 minutes, a few times a day, you can access this practice, and is very much based on mindful practice. There's a hand up, Maya, I think. Oh, Lucy, did you want to add something?
No, I totally agree with you. It's very much like, when you drive home from work or wherever, you have a certain direction that you always take. And what it sort of, if you change that direction, all of a sudden there are things that you haven't seen before. But I think for me, it's like, it's so easy to get into a pattern of behavior and doing things in a certain way. And positive intelligence kind of gears you to look at things a little bit differently.
And there's a hand up, Maya.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Okay, great. Thank you for all this information. I'm listening and thinking how it applies to our situation. We're 3 adult kids, and in terms of my boundaries, it's not that I'm being burdened with too much. I'm actually the sibling that's doing the least right now. I'm worried about one of my siblings who's probably doing too much, and it's having a strain on his family. What I'm dealing with right now that I think positive intelligence is useful for this, but it's a different type of boundary setting where I've been the one who sort of goes along with everything, all the decisions that are being made, because it's easier. Like, obviously it's very difficult to be an only child dealing with this, but it's also difficult with siblings because people have different ideas about what should be done when and how. So we're navigating that, but my thing is now as things are evolving and now we're dealing with the sale of a house and things like that, I have different ideas than my siblings about how to proceed. And because I've been the sort of silent one and the going along, the easygoing one, now it's hard to assert myself. And it's funny because in other contexts, that's not my personality. I think I'm a pretty assertive person, but this just has seemed like there's enough going on. I don't need to get into petty fights, sort of choose your battles. But now I do want to assert myself. And so I don't know if you can call that boundary setting, but it's like being clear. When you talked about, announcing to people that, I'm going to say no from now on, and I'm going to stand up for myself a little bit more. That resonated with me because it's sort of like, well, I need to now have a voice, and they're not going to like it probably that I may, and so it's the relationship between the family members more so than with the person who has dementia, who's sort of going along with, for now, is going along with pretty much everything that's being decided, not always without bumps, but so yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. It's a different type of thing that many people are probably, I'm sure I'm not the only one navigating it, feeling like, where are the boundaries between siblings and other caregivers, like when there's like a pack of caregivers, how do we, sort of stand up for ourselves without, constantly, you don't want to get into bickering over stuff that in the big picture maybe doesn't matter that much.
Lucy, did you want to comment?
Go ahead. I think it has
Okay.
to do more with the looking at the positive, which you are the expert in.
Maya, I really resonate with what you are saying. And yes, this applies to exactly what you're saying. I have to tell you that I too am one of 3 caregivers. I have a brother and a sister, and it is a constant. And we've actually had a couple of episodes on this. It's the positive is, we're not alone, but we really do have to work through a lot of these things. And you can correct me, but I heard you kind of saying you've been more quiet because you feel you've been doing the least. I hear physically or the least, or that's your perception of it. So I want to address that and say, it doesn't have to be equal, equal, equal. There are many ways that families divide the tasks. In my family, we divided it by who's good at what, and depending on work schedules, who's available. But it can change, and sometimes people are quiet for what I said, the fear of, do we want to open up this can of worms? What's going to happen? I want to get along with my siblings, and I want us to be like, I don't know if you're like me. I'm the hyperachiever. I have a controller saboteur. And avoider, comes into that a bit. But I want to keep the family peace. But I love what Lucy said about giving permission and taking permission. It's very important for you to voice your needs and your thoughts, not only for yourself, but what I've discovered, even though I might think, I'm right, is that my siblings have come up with ideas that are even better than mine. And together we can make better decisions. So sharing is so important. Putting aside those saboteurs, being brave, using tactful words. That's why Lucy gave a lot of examples of how to talk. I mean, everyone has their family culture and knows, kind of the right thing to say. But it is really important to speak up. And I'm sure you have a lot to add. And I bet your family would be very happy to hear it from you. You just, again, you have to prepare them for a change, I know I've been quiet, but guess what? There's some things I really need to say. So, and bank on the love and the trust. It's not always there, but that's one piece. Did you have any comments or?
No, that's really helpful. And yeah, it's actually my sister who's probably more like your personality, who's like the doer, and I know what to do and all, like and so I appreciate that because things do get done because of her. But yeah, no, that sounds really good. And I like that approach that you mentioned, just to say, I know I've been quiet. However, on this point, I actually have an opinion and I'd like to share it with you. And I think we're in a place where we can do that. We've been really good. We're all in different places. So we're on chat a lot. And it's been a good way for us to just say, okay, let's have a video call because we're chatting and like we need to talk. So I will keep all of that in mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing it up. I did want to add something in the beginning about, just because we're always talking about the negative aspects of caregiving. But what you're sharing with us all here today is really an evidence of positive caregiving, in that it strengthens family bonds and it makes you a good unit. So that is one of the strengths that can come out of this terrible disease. And just one last word about if you're worried, anyone here, about a sibling that you feel is doing too much and really should be sharing, setting boundaries, share this kind of information with them. It's not just for you. It's very hard to make somebody else do something you think they should do, but it never hurts to share. I'm worried about you. I'm concerned. Thank you, Maya, for sharing all that.
Thank you. So I think we have another hand raised by Sylvia. She had raised some comments in the chat earlier, but has decided just to speak. So I'm going to unmute Sylvia.
You know what? I just want to remind you, it's 11 o'clock, Maria. Maybe we want to stop the recording and maybe people will feel more comfortable to,
It's all right with me if you record my question. It could be helpful later.
Okay.
First of all, thank you. I'm from Colombia. I'm Colombian woman. I'm 70 years old. I had my father with Alzheimer. He was diagnosed on 1988. And my mother, later on, she had this vascular dementia, and she passed almost 6 years ago. Now I know I had my test on my memory because on pandemia, I had this blowouts or whatever the word in English is, and I am okay. But my sister was diagnosed with a GDS4 of Alzheimer. They're trying to narrow the diagnosis to see if she has a frontotemporal or whatever the name is in English, because I don't know them. Well, my question is all about how family can give care, can give love. But in the case of my sister, she's an engineer, and when she was, say, 6 years younger, she decided, because she had this feeling that she was not okay, she decided and told her siblings, one boy, one girl, one lives in Pittsburgh and the other one, the girl, lives in Australia, in Melbourne. So, and she's divorced. So she's completely alone, and the pandemic got her alone in her own house, which is really, really big. And she didn't want to eat or to come out. She runs her own company and things like that. But right now, her boy, her Daniel, which is his name, he's kind of brilliant in a mathematician brain, but he is not very proficient in an emotional way. And he wants to respect Julia's decision of not sharing what she has. And she is really, really in need of love or whatever. And well, we can suggest something, but even Maria or Daniel won't take her phone calls. And I'm the only one, I'm talking like a female, in my house. We are 5 siblings, 2 men and 3 women, that knows and cares about learning on how to give care to a person with dementia. So I was the one who took the leadership in my mother's case, because when it was my father's case, my mother did all the leadership and decisions. And right now, the only thing I've come up with is, or gained, is that Julia has a maid every day, because she didn't have. We in Colombia used to have maids every day a week. We can afford it. It's not like costly as it is in your countries, but it was a huge fight with my nephews in order to convince them to have a person in house that would take care of cooking and of, cleaning and preventing her to fall down the stairs and things like that. She has been dragged away. Well, I don't know if the word is dragged, but she has been limited her action in her own company because she was doing upside decisions and she was losing money, and she was, well, it was really a headache. And that's where the money comes from for her to live on. And I don't know, I can see that my nephew is trying to cope with all he has to do. He works at Google. He has a very high position or whatever that has a very big responsibilities. So coming to Colombia every 2 months or every 6 weeks to take care of things or making decisions remotely is not the best thing to do. And I can see he is burning out, but he has established these boundaries, and I listened very carefully to Lucy and to Joanne, but he doesn't believe in all those PQs or those pauses that you may implement just to calm yourself. I can see he is walking to a burnout, and I don't know how to say, hey, I'm here. I'm not going to take the whole burden. No, but I'm here to cooperate with you since I'm in the same city. The question would be, do you have like a tip or a clue to explain this? Because I don't understand his his behavior. I don't understand their decision to keep us out of every limit, so we could not visit, even visit Julia.
Lucy, I'm going to let you take this one.
Well, it must be extremely frustrating. I mean, really, it must be so hard for you. I mean, just the fact that you can't even go visit her, he's sort of isolating her from you. It's really hard unless you have a really good history of what the dynamics were in the family before, what your relationship was with him. It could be, it's a very frustrating and very difficult thing to deal with. But you did say that she is at home and that she has someone that comes in. So are you concerned? My question to you, regardless of sensitizing him, you might not be able to change him in any way, but I hear your concerns for your sister. Do you have any concerns about her safety, about whether she's getting the right food, whether she's being taken care of physically well, whether she's being taken care of emotionally well as well? You know, that's what I would kind of want to know from you, what is going on in that respect. As I said again, you can't change him, and I don't know what the history of your relationship was. And maybe you need to be able to go and talk to somebody about that to be able to understand. You know, it'll be difficult for us to kind of share all that information. So
All right.
are you
I can answer. And first of all, I ask for your excuse for my English, but sometimes when you're emotional, words go away. And my native language is Spanish, not English. So first of all, yes, she is being cared of from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then she's completely alone. She can go out, walk, lose, get lost or something like that. Even though she recognizes her surroundings, well, she's trying to drive, and the doctor says it is not safe for her to drive. So she is alone from 6 p.m. till next morning, and on Saturdays evening and the whole Sunday. So she has to cook, even though they leave her like lunchbox for Saturday's evening and for Sunday the whole day. She forgets that she has the food prepared, and so she starts the kitchen, the stove, and things like that. I think that's a risk. And
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it does sound like it is a risk for sure. Now, I don't know what your healthcare system is all about, but it appears to me that she really does others need to be involved as well in this situation. Professionals to really, if a doctor says she cannot drive, you know, she should not be driving. So again, I don't know what the healthcare system is like where you are, but definitely a professional evaluation needs to be done to really make sure that she's not at risk, whether she, you know, if she's cooking, can there be a fire? It's not something that you alone need to be responsible for. I think professional help should get into the house.
yes, the problem is, how do I convince my nephews? I mean, my niece and nephew.
Maybe Joanne can give you a good
So,
clue.
yeah, it is a complex situation, but I'm just going to wrap up for our listeners. Just some other thoughts I've had for you, Sylvia. First of all, I just want to go back to your nephew. It sounds like he really is, because we're talking about positive intelligence and boundaries, sounds like he has the hyper rational saboteur. So he is really focused on data. You explained him as a bright, intelligent man. So he is going to, and has every right as the son and caregiver, to proceed in that way. And it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for you to get him to set boundaries. And this is one of the frustrating things. We can control ourselves. Sometimes we see others around us, the person suffering from dementia and other caregivers suffering and in pain, and there's not a thing we can do about it. Part of it is accepting and understanding that there is a process. And along this journey, something is going to change. Lucy alluded to risk. You mentioned there are some risk factors until sometimes we say something that's so hard for people to listen to. You need to wait for a crisis. So sometimes if your sister will not allow anyone in and her caregivers will not allow anyone in, we wait for the crisis where risk becomes evident, and then the law allows us to act. And sometimes that's the best we can do. So that would be my, my final
Thank you.
comments on this.
Thank you so much. Thank
Very-
you, thank you, thank you.
Totally
So-
agree with you, Joanne.
At this moment, I just wanted to say it's time, we're a little bit past the time where we stop the recording, but we will do so now. Thank you, Joanne and Lucy, and all of you who are participating home or work. And the portion that's been recorded will be posted on the Caring Conversations page of our website in the next few weeks.